You're listening to Conversation Balloons, interviews with experts and friends about how the generations can help each other thrive. I'm your host, Leah Farish. Check out this episode. I am welcoming the founder and CEO of Life Architects with Tami Peterson today. She's in Dallas, but she helps people all over this country in designing their future. She has created an instrument called My Life Prototype, and she helps students and seekers map their upcoming years. Her master's is in leadership theology and society from Regent College in Vancouver. That must have been tough conditions up there. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
It is. Well, we're delighted and excited to talk to you today because you have a breadth of knowledge about young people and about how to guide them. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
We want to know what you are seeing in the different age cohorts, what they're wanting for their futures, how they see themselves in it, what contributions they uniquely have, how they've changed over the last 30 years. So that will be a 2-hour conversation, but give us a couple of your impressions, if you would.
Sure. Yeah, we were tracking along pretty well until COVID hit. And Gen Z is the generation now that's in high school in the early years of college. So they're kind of the coming of age generation. And we knew that they were going to be a little risk averse. They really wanted some solutions that were not like their millennial cousins, where the millennial cousins were passion seekers and they wanted to do everything and they went into debt for college. And Gen Z really was not going to do that. They were ready to save money, work hard, kind of find a dream that they wanted to do. But it was all very pragmatic and practical. And then COVID hit. And so we had this generation that was already a little nervous. And COVID just kind of made them get even more risk averse. And so we're seeing young people, especially college-age young people, staying closer to home. Parents are going with them to college if they're visiting. We've seen a huge uptick in community college enrollment and also online enrollment. So we're seeing some interesting things, and higher ed has been looking toward 2025 because it's going to be the smallest senior class in recent history in America. And so everything shifted because of COVID. They were ramping up international students coming in, and domestic students were decreasing. And so that generation has a lot of opportunity because of COVID. The colleges are really seeking them. They're doing a lot of new programs. But that generation may not be as adventurous as the older cousins and brothers and sisters that they have in the millennial group. So that's the primary thing. We're seeing, because Gen X are primarily their parents, Gen
And
X was
Gen
also...
X is?
Gen X are the people that were born between 1965 and 1980.
Mm-hmm.
And so Gen Z were born 1997 to 2012. It's interesting because those Gen X parents were the first latchkey kids. So they were the ones whose both parents were working for the first time. So they came home from school by themselves, and they were a little risk averse because of that. They knew stranger danger. They actually were the first group to be a little more uncomfortable being alone, even though they had more freedom. So we're seeing those two generations together being less adventurous. Now that's a generational thing, and there's individuals in each generation that love adventure. So you may be one of those.
Does risk averseness always manifest itself in not wanting to go off to college at a distance, or does it also manifest itself in wanting to go to college and delay the responsibility and challenge of a job in the real world, or maybe staying in college for a master's rather than get out and slug it out in the work environment.
Yeah, well, the Great Resignation is they're watching it. They're all in college or in high school watching what just happened with mainly millennials walking off the job in America, and so that's been a very interesting change for them.
Mhm.
They were gonna go to college and get a job right out of college. In fact, some of those jobs that were high paying with four-year degrees, like engineers, were very appealing to Gen Zers. I think it manifests itself also in, not having serious dating relationships or any dating relationships. It's very interesting what we're looking at around dating, but also in education. So I think, yes, delaying a little bit, going to grad school, possibly if they can do it without debt. I do think higher ed is, gonna change some things because of Gen Z, because
Mhm.
they don't wanna mortgage their future.
The big opportunities that I see for making a living now are in the trades, and people in that age cohort are not necessarily led in that direction. Do you ever have occasion to see a student, a young person who you see them not so much as a student, but perhaps entering training for, aviation or services of some kind?
Mhm. Yes, I am seeing an uptick in aviation, although that is primarily in higher ed right now or the military, so they're still training pilots in the military, of course. So we're seeing aviation for sure. Had a couple young people last week that were talking aviation, but they're headed off to higher ed to do it, which is an expensive way to do it. But I think the colleges are making way for them. When it comes to trades, we are seeing a huge interest, especially with young men, around the idea of that they kind of have the question, I should know how to do all this. Like I should know how to fix a car or hammer a nail, all
Yeah.
those things those hands-on jobs, and it's very expensive to hire people to do those things. So we're seeing millennials, taking little Saturday projects to Home Depot and learning how to do stuff. So I do think we're trending that way. I also see young men in particular, but young women too, wanting a shorter entry ramp to a job.
Mm.
And those jobs, particularly like welders, electricians,
Plumbing.
plumbing. Yes, yes, we had to do plumbing last year at our house, and it was
Yeah.
such a huge job and very expensive, and they get
Heat
paid
and
very
air.
well
Oh
for
my
that.
gosh.
And so I do think we're seeing more hesitation. Now, part of the struggle is trying to think of the generation as a whole, which I would say middle class, upper middle class, we're still seeing everybody wanting to go to college. That dream still is there.
Mhm.
And that would be the biggest shift is that I'm now seeing some of those clients who are saying, what can I do with 2 years investment and how can I get to a good living where I can do something with my hands? One of the biggest statements I get from Gen Z is, I don't want to sit in front of a computer my whole life.
Wow.
And yeah, and frankly, that's a lot of what the highest paid jobs are.
Right.
And sitting in front of a
Mm.
computer as an analyst or something like that. And so that's been interesting having conversations because what we do is talk about vocation. What are you created to do? And so when you start asking young people and their families what they see in themselves and in their children, parents say things like, well, they've always loved to dig in the dirt or they loved Legos. And, then they say, well, I love Minecraft. And I'm thinking, okay, so here's someone who's very 3D oriented and hands on oriented. So we get to the end and they're like, well, what jobs can I do? And really, most of those hands-on jobs are in the trades. And
Mhm.
so sometimes that's a big shock. Parents are like, "Oh, okay." Dad's an executive at IBM and mom's a nurse practitioner or something, and
Uh-huh.
and they're like, "Oh, I don't even know how to we have to think about this one a little bit." And so I do see that shift.
Mhm.
And I think it's gonna be very helpful for our society to be more local. I think that's one of the other things that COVID did for us is we began to understand our local society became more important.
And what about medicine? It seems like it has so many more entry points than it used to.
Yeah, medicine's a great example of somewhere. So, a phlebotomist, the person who takes blood when you go give blood or at the doctor, they only need a high school education, a diploma. They can go in, get trained as a phlebotomist, and it's a low entry for most people to start there. And there are actually ramps out of that, especially if you work for a doctor's office. The doctor's
Mhm.
office is typically willing to invest in a person to get the next level up. And so you end up, you know, um, doing the next level up, which may take 18 months to get training to do run another machine in the office. Basically, is how it
Mhm.
works.
Mhm.
And if you're interested and you're willing to be a lifelong learner, you can get all the way to a pretty high paying job in the medical field by just doing the next step. And it very often employers will pay for that. And we're seeing that more and more with Gen Z as employers. In fact, I just read something about Google and Facebook and Microsoft. They're looking at promising high schoolers now. They're trying to get them in high school to commit. And they'll just take them right out of high school and train them how to do what they need them to do. No college needed.
That's a hopeful sign. Um, how do you discern between what parents want for their kids and what the student, him or herself, really wants and is has an impetus for?
Yeah. I think that's one of the hardest questions, and one of the ones we work on a lot is trying to turn the hearts of parents to their children and the hearts of children to their parents when it comes to understanding each other. And so a lot of the intergenerational work we do is with families, just communication. As we become
Mm.
communication experts in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
asking good, probing questions. And then we work individually with the parents and individually with the students, just having different conversations. And a lot of miscommunication is based on fear from both sides. So
Mhm.
parents are fearful that their student won't be able to feed himself when he gets out of whatever he's going to be training in. And the student is might be fearful that he can't do the thing that the parent wants him to do. That if he hasn't been a great academic student, he may fear that he's just going to fail and that'll be a complicated thing. So we do a lot of chatting about it together. We do what's called a family genome, and we just talk about what have the people in your family done throughout the generations, and we talk about how you know um, 2 or 3 generations ago that would have been your path, and now it's not. You can pretty much choose whatever you'd like to do, and that makes it even harder. And so sometimes taking an assessment that's an ability assessment, we use the Highlands Ability Battery for that. That helps parents have a realistic view of the student's natural abilities. And once you get to natural abilities, they're fairly objective. You do just work samples and they kind of show what they can do. Parents begin to say, "Oh, I see." And it may be that, unfortunately, sometimes it means that the student's been not working up to their potential, and the parents find out that they actually can see in 3D, and they have great hearing, great learning channels, and they're a
Mhm.
C student, and that becomes a little more complicated in a different direction.
Yeah, I've found that people are perfectionists in the areas where they have gifts. they are slobs in the areas where they don't have
That's a great way to put I have never thought of it that way.
we all have
Um,
these areas of
yeah.
mediocrity. You know,
Uh,
that movie Mozart
uh-huh. Yeah.
and I doubt that there's this element was true about him, but, in the movie, Mozart has this ridiculous, goofy laugh,
Yes.
and, it's like his area of mediocrity, his
Uh-huh.
area of childlikeness and not picking up that, this is not even appropriate, and yet he had these areas of genius, but we all have areas of mediocrity that are just roughed in, and that we should not be working for money in those areas.
Yeah, I like that phrase, "roughed in." That's a great phrase to think about because, um, yeah, you don't wanna have to go back and get those, like, polished up because they take so much energy, so that's a great way to think about it, and frankly, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to work in the areas that you are gifted in. It's not always the way it is.
True.
And so when you get to do that, that's just a real blessing to be able to say, "Oh, yes, I do this well, and I also can do this and get paid for it," which is great, and that's not always the case, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, I was hearing, Missy Wallace on, the Gospel Coalition and also Dave Evans talking about how asking a young person, "What's your passion?" That's what just follow your passion, that's really not the most productive question, and you talked about reflection, and, uh, Dave Evans says you have to have some data in
Yeah.
order to reflect,
Yep.
and you mentioned the key thing one of the key elements, the data that you have to reflect on is the feedback you're getting.
Right.
And I think that was a real weakness when I was just out of college. I was not really open to the feedback I was getting. People would say, "You're not doing this very well." And I'd go in my mind, you're stupid. You're a jerk. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, they did know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to hear it. I know of a youngster who took, I believe it was the SAT,
Mhm.
and there was an optional section where you could get feedback on what your score indicates about your aptitudes
Ooh.
and possible careers that you might be suited for.
Mm.
And he wanted to either be an entrepreneur and go into business like kind of his mentor,
Mhm. Mhm.
or he felt maybe called to be a missionary
Oh, mhm.
or a pastor. Is a very spiritual
Mhm.
kid. And another young lady I know of who took standardized testing and didn't get any guidance, from anywhere in her educational process on her aspiration to be a fantastic homemaker
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
mother. And
Yeah.
there's just this void
Mhm.
for people like that. So the boy, when he got his scores back, there were 6 jobs or professions he was encouraged to go into. 5 of the 6 were to work for the government,
Wow.
and, it was like social worker,
Mhm.
crisis intervention
Mm. Mhm.
person, so, public school teacher,
Mhm.
and it kinda made me wonder, wait a minute. First of all, this is nothing that he has been attracted to,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I don't see those, and I had been in higher ed and in, a department head in a high school.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't that didn't seem right, and it did seem like they were actually trying to lead him toward
Mhm.
being a government employee,
Mhm.
and I wondered if there was a little bit of an agenda behind that. And I have not heard in other years that uh, career guidance option has been included
Yeah.
in standardized testing, and it just
Mm.
made me wonder if a lot of people I wrote to the it's so long ago, but I wrote to them and said, "It just seems, what's going on here?"
A little fishy. Let's seek that out. Yeah, So I do think, I mean, I had a young woman come to my office when I was a counselor, and she said, I really just want to be a wife and mother. Where do I go to do that? And I said, honey, you go to college. Like at that point, it was like 2000, I don't know, 2006. And I was at a college prep school, and like the social fabric was torn enough in our culture that we just don't have opportunities to meet people at that age that that would be sort of moving in the same direction as a person who really wanted to establish a home in a certain way. So I just said, you go to college, you're a good student, go to college, and you'll meet a lot of people. And part of meeting a lot of people is, the opportunity to get married and things like that. And then, take a degree that will help you being a good wife and mother. And we are seeing an uptick in home ec classes, even in college. We're seeing some
Interest.
colleges teaching kids how to cook and some personal finance stuff. And so I think we're coming back around to, oh yeah, if everybody's working, then how are we living? And those questions are becoming more important, especially for Gen Z, because they want stability. They
Mhm.
really want stability, and so they're actually thinking about those things. So the millennials kind of backed into it. They're the group just before Gen Z, and they backed into it by saying, uh, "Wow, this is all life is. I go to work all day, and I come home, and I, pick up a burger on the way home, and I'm gaining weight, and I don't like the way my life is." And so they kind of backed in, going, "No, I think I should be exercising more and eating better." And so they started creating their lifestyle changes a little later in their life, like late 20s. The youngest millennials are 26 right now. So that group, the younger group, is a little healthier than the older group was, and
Mhm.
so they're backing into being foodies. So my
Mhm.
millennial clients are all, they love good food and just like to have time with friends, and they actually enjoy being in each other's homes. And so I think we've kind of come full swing. Um, on the pendulum, where we were so work oriented for so long.
Mhm.
Baby boomers who were building, obviously,
Mhm.
building the country back after the wars, and then Gen X, they were the first two income families, where it was just normal. They're in their 40s and 50s now, and
Mhm.
so um, they just had a lot of they had everything shifted under Gen X's feet. I have great compassion. I'm a boomer, but I have great compassion for Gen X because everything shifted. Higher ed shifted. They kind of went through um, all the wars. It was just lots of things going on in the late 20th century that Gen X had to live through, and lots of things shifted under their feet. And so,
Technology,
yeah,
personal devices, 9/11.
yes, absolutely. And so those are the kind of things that are really impacting these generations now. In
Mhm.
fact, Gen Z's generational dates, 1997 and 2012, are actually milestones in technology. So 1997 was when the internet became ubiquitous. We could get
Mhm.
online, you've got mail. In 1997, pretty easily. And then 2012 is when the smartphone became ubiquitous. And so a whole generation, you would think 9/11 or something like that would be the markers, and they're markers, they influence a generation. But generational research count the big shift as that 1997, when the internet really changed the way we did everything.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, so we're seeing millennials and Gen Z really working through, what does a life filled with technology look like? And how can I live in a healthy way and in the way I'd like to live, um, while I'm really being kind of pushed around. I know a lot of them really feel that way, being pushed around by their smartphone. They have to do this, and they've set up things to tell them when to do stuff, and they get pushed around by it. You had asked about healthcare. We're seeing some good reasons to go into healthcare. Like, I think Gen Z has come around to the fact that helping people is very important, and creating community and health is very important. And the millennials are doing that too. A lot of the millennials went off and did their stint in really high paying jobs, and now they're like cranberry farmers or something. Some of the clients that I've been talking to, they're like, I just want to farm somewhere. I'm like, oh, that's good. Farming's good. Got a little Wendell Berry going on there.
Uh,
We
well,
like
going from
agriculture.
the kind of disembodied to the embodied
Yes. Yes.
lifestyle, and certainly a balanced
Yes.
lifestyle where you're in touch with the rest of reality besides your psyche and the screen.
That's right. And I do think that that has become a very important thing. And while I don't know that, we saw it in tech first. So the tech parents in Silicon Valley stopped giving their kids technology. Um, and so in education, it was interesting because we thought that disadvantaged kids were going to be left behind because they didn't have technology. And now I think we're sort of shifting our thinking. And of course, COVID affected that. Everybody had technology, and we were definitely seeing a whole year lost for lots of reasons. I met a man who runs a cotton gin north of Waco, and we were chatting about. He's an engineer. He's an engineering major, but he was telling me that he'd love to get some young people in there to show them how to do stuff, and it's very hands on. It's seasonal. And cotton comes in, and you do it all. You do all your ginning, and then there's other stuff you do in the off season. And I just think that seasonal living too helps people be healthy. You know,
Mhm.
um, not
Yeah,
not.
I've found, um, my husband and I are interested in international folk dance, and we have
Ooh,
relatives who are great big into square dancing, and, it's really sad that, especially with international folk dancing, these are dances that some of them have been done for, 500, 800 years, and they're dying out
yeah,
because everyone who attends these dances is, shall we say, over 50.
seasoned.
There might be a couple of teenagers or,
Mhm,
midlife people, but
mhm,
not enough to literally hold that circle together,
yeah,
and, it's such a beautiful way to just celebrate life and experience music and, learn about other cultures. Oh my goodness, and, for generations that have been so interested in diversity
mhm,
and cultural differences, to see no one taking an interest in these dances is, I just thank God there are at least gonna be videos of them,
yeah,
because that may be the only way they're preserved. I think
yeah,
the arts are doing pretty well, and, dance and ballet and things like that are seeming to still attract young people, and
mhm.
and that's wonderful. What are you seeing in the arts?
Well, it's interesting what you were talking about folk dancing. I really see that those intergenerational relationships becoming very important for that. And of course, the arts are. I have two artsy kids. I have a son who's a video game designer, and my daughter's a voice actress. So we're all the arts. My husband sings at a big barbershop chorus, and so we're all artsy over here. Um, and I think I have two millennial kids, and so the millennials were very interested in doing something that they were motivated to do and passionate about, and so they were willing to kind of work through what can I do to get there, and that they became a little disillusioned, many of them, because there just aren't that many viable jobs.
Mhm,
I do think one of the things that technology has helped us with is some of the influencer jobs or the YouTube sensations. Like, uh, we have two violinists from Australia that we love, two set violin, and they played their violins in the symphonies, and then they started doing this sort of comedy, classical music instruction kind of video blog,
mhm,
and they have millions of people watching them, and so they have sponsors and they make money doing it. So I do think there's more opportunity for the arts. There's way more opportunity to express the arts because of the
mhm,
internet. You've
mhm.
written a song, you can put it out there, and of course, we all know lots of different stories about people that put a video out and they're like, yeah, they're now the newest sensation that everyone's
Mhm.
listening to. And then there's thousands of other people that have done it, and people are like, you should not be doing this. And if you can't carry a tune, then that's a constraint for being a singer, I think. And so you never know.
Mhm. Let me go back to what you mentioned in passing about you're not seeing, kids dating very much. Do you think that the failure to date is going to, impede their ability to found a family? Are they just not oriented in education or in their own families to think in those terms? Or are they trying to just do things sequentially and first situate themselves
Yeah,
financially?
I think all those things are true. I think, depending on the young person I'm talking to, they have lots of different reasons for it. One of the studies that, generational researchers have really sort of gone, "Oh, no, what's happening here?" Came out in a book by Jean Twenge. It's called iGen, Why Today's Super Connected Kids Are Growing Up Less Rebellious, More Tolerant, Less Happy, and Completely Unprepared for Adulthood, and what that means
I
for the
was
rest of
just
us.
reading that last night.
Yeah. So that book particularly has some startling factors, and it was 2012. So a lot of the researchers are pointing to um, everything changing in 2012 when the smartphone became ubiquitous, and so I think we're just in a very dynamic change in our culture.
Mhm,
I think social media has created some fear and anxiety for young people to take risk, even in relationships. And I just think about middle school for me. You know, you drop your tray of food on the floor in the cafeteria, everyone laughs, and it's forgotten in a few weeks. And now it's on social media or some other site
mhm,
forever. And
mhm,
so living has become very complicated for young people. And I think it's a family thing. I think families, I think parents have, from my observation, of course, it's a small pool, but parents of millennials focused a lot on work. You know, get your work life in order, go to college, don't, you know, and so they were sort of praying, please don't get married before you get out of college.
mhm,
Now they're just, now, you know, some of those millennials are 30 and not married, and they're like, please bring someone to marry my child. And so I think some of that is true. I think the they want relationships, they want good friendships, and they want romantic relationships, but our society is just not set up for it. So one example, when you were talking about dancing, I recommend that all my young friends go to weddings. Like, listen, here's a whole group of people your age who are,
mm,
you know, at a place that, you know, you have connections, you have social connections with them. And so you can sit across from them and get to know them without any pressure at all. You don't have to go anywhere particular and look for people. Here they are. And
mhm,
I do think the older generations creating more and more spaces for that, walkable spaces in cities, like there's a city ecology that's going on here as well. And so when you get in a car in your garage and drive out and you don't talk to any of your neighbors and you don't know who they are,
mhm,
there's a whole bunch of stuff that just has shifted. If I were going to say this is the one thing parents need to do, is you need to continue to listen to your children. They don't need so much advice as they need somewhere they know that they can say stuff and you'll just go, "Well, I love you anyway, honey." I mean, literally.
mhm.
And I love you and I want to know what you're thinking.
Uh, the kind of the opposite extreme, I just heard a story yesterday that blew my mind. A friend of mine was telling me that when she and her friend were in, I'll call her the friend Jane, so they were in high school together, and Jane was smart, but not a diligent student, and Jane it was back in the years when, the hard copy report cards were mailed to the
Oh,
home,
mhm. Yeah.
and so my friend and Jane would, intercept the mail,
Oh.
and they would change the report card from an F to a B,
Oh. Oh, that's the easiest way to do it.
and then after several months,
Oh,
at the
no.
end of the junior year, Jane got a letter. Her parents were sent a letter that said Jane has to repeat junior year.
Wow. Wow.
And Jane intercepted that letter
Oh,
too.
no. Wow. Well, here's a
So
clever kid.
guess what
That's
she
a
did?
long
She
oh,
went
wow. Wow.
through junior year again, and her parents thought she was a senior. It
Wow,
came
so
time for graduation, and she wasn't ordering a cap and gown.
I don't even understand how that ended. How wow.
There was a meltdown in the family,
I'm
but
sure.
she did eventually graduate and didn't do well in college, and finally grew up and got a great job working for in an office, and just I worked there for like 50 years and did
Wow.
great.
Wow, isn't that amazing? Yeah, that cleverness that comes and that's one of that's the other thing that I look at young people and just kinda go, "You're so clever. Use it for good. Use your power for good."
Yeah.
Because, wow, they can be clever and they can figure out ways to scam the system. And, of course, because, there's sort of a scarcity mentality with Gen Z, like, they don't know that they're gonna have the job they want or the career they want or go to the college they want. There's all of this anxiety around that, and they're just on this treadmill trying to earn the things that they really, really want. So there's rampant cheating, like, it's not and, because, uh, cheating isn't necessarily something that is right or wrong to some people. Like that's kind of how they think.
Mhm,
When you read the statistics about the way the younger generations think about things, it's not as black and white as it would have been in earlier generations. And um, so yeah, if they can, they're just they're problem solving when they're cheating. Like I've had kids say, "Yeah, I didn't study, but I solved that problem by getting the answers from my friend." And I was like, "Okay, so we have a word for that."
it's called
And it's
stealing.
called yes, it's called stealing and lying, actually.
Yes, yeah.
And so back to what you were saying about the character issues, and I do see quite a few schools and education, particularly charter schools and some of the private schools for sure, and some mainline public schools have really discovered that if we actually don't think about character at all, then we make a pretty bad space for young people to inhabit. And so if
Mhm,
everybody's lying to each other, everybody's trying to get ahead of everybody, it creates that anxiety and depression. And so, some of the suicide rates that we're seeing and attempted suicide things are really based on, I don't see any future for myself.
mm,
And everyone tells me I'm terrible at everything. And if all they're doing is education and they're not very good at it, I've literally sat across from kids who looking at their results from assessments and just said, I'm thinking in my head, wow, if this report is correct, this kid has a really hard time in school. And so I'll say, "Tell me about school." And I've had various responses, and the one that breaks your heart the most is, "Well, school is really, really hard for me, and so I don't do anything else. I just do
mm,
school, and I come home and I do homework for 6 hours, and I get C's, but I'm passing." And I just kind of go, "That breaks my heart," because, uh, that's you're in a place where the way you're created doesn't fit the way we've created the world for
mhm,
you, and so trying to figure out, uh, other pathways for young people to figure out how they do it, and we're seeing some of that in education where, narrative grading has been one of the things that I've seen that's new.
mhm,
That's old, actually. That's what they
mhm,
do at Oxford, kind of. Um, they the student does something and they talk about what they know and they have another conversation and they they get to a place where they have the knowledge they need to pass the class and get a grade. And so the narrative grading is yes, it took him this long, but this is what I see him knowing, and he articulated the important content, and so
mhm,
he gets a pass. And so a lot of those narrative grading schools are doing pass fail. So it's interesting to kind of be in education in this dynamic time because we're all trying to keep kids alive and healthy. Like it
Yes.
really has become uh, tragically true that we're trying to figure out a way to help kids flourish, and it just seems like a lot of the odds are against them with technology and just a lot of what's going on in our culture. So
Mhm. I got to speak to some National Honor Society students a while
ooh,
back, and, of course, these are the top dogs
yeah,
academically. They're leaders and, gifted kids, and I said, talked about the subject they asked me to talk about, and then I said, I've read that now 50% of all 18 to 25-year-olds are reporting mental health problems or
yeah,
have been observed with mental health problems. That means even if you aren't experiencing that, 50% of the people around you
mm-hmm,
are dealing with rage, paranoia,
mm-hmm,
suicidal thoughts, addiction to porn, all kinds of things.
yeah,
And this is the pool of people from which you have to find people to work together on projects. You have to find a
yeah,
mate. You have to uh, go places with.
mm-hmm,
And even if you are experiencing some kind of problem like this, I have something to tell you. You're not crazy. And they started crying.
oh, yeah, yeah,
They just, this is a crazy making environment. And I said,
mm-hmm,
You're just living in a very strange time in history.
yeah, yeah, they are,
And so are all the people around you. And you're leaders, you have gifts, and you can bring light. You really can.
yeah,
So I I was surprised myself that I said it, but I was very surprised at their reaction.
yeah,
And there were moms sitting in the back, and they start crying too.
yeah, yeah,
It's a heartbreaking time,
it is,
and a time when students can't trust each other very
yes,
much.
yeah,
We have
yeah,
lost so much trust in this society.
yeah, they really have. And the healthy really and truly, the healthy choices, which it's sad to say it this way, but they end up being cynics or stoics.
Mm,
So they're just cynical about the way life is, or they're stoic. Nothing's going to hurt me. I can take those punches and not get hurt, and I can just stand up and be who I need to be without emotion. And I do think it's certainly not flourishing to stand in one of those two places, to stand as a stoic or to stand as a cynic. But it is the natural response to the way culture is moving right now, where nothing is certain and everyone is out for their own good, and no one makes the path easier for you. You have to fight your way through it, and it's there's just a lot going on, and so young people choosing one of those two paths over total mental breakdown. I mean, that's a lot of how they're making it, and I think healthy understanding of who they are and what they were created, why they're here, what they're created to do. I think that's our solution to that struggle is like, listen, there's more to life than you just saying, well, I just have to, suck it up and stay on the hamster wheel and
mhm,
get the prize at the end of my life. And I just am like, yeah, no, I think there's actually some more stuff that you could do, and some reflection and healthy conversation will help you. And then really prototyping some options, trying to figure out, if I did this, what would that look like? And if I did this, what would that look like? Because what you do in life grows out of who you are.
mhm,
And so really working on who you are, being healthy and creating good friendships, learning how to be a friend. Like I've had many young people just go, I don't even know how to be a friend. And frankly, I'll tell you, in the adult generations that I work with as just a coach, a life coach, they're asking the same questions. Like, I don't have friends, they're saying. I have nobody that I go do stuff with, and if some horrible thing happened to me in the middle of the night, I don't know who I would call. And they just it's heartbreaking to say, well, that you might want to spend some time on that. You might want to spend some time thinking, how can I be a better friend? And who would I like to be friends with? Look around and see who's there and sort of sharpen those skills. But it's easier to just work. It's easier to just go to school, easier to, just keep my head down and not risk
Check
at
the
all.
boxes.
Yeah, check the boxes. And I tell people all the time, there's all sorts of kinds of achievement, and early achievement is only one of them.
Oh, I like
So,
that.
yeah. And so if you want to start something, begin it, no matter what age you are. Begin again, learn again, be a lifelong learner, and risk being with people, learning with people, caring about people, and spend some time reflecting on why you're here, because you're here and we need you. And I think that's the big message to young people is, we need you in all your fullness to show up.
I love that. Well, I thank you so much for sharing this hopeful viewpoint with us, and carry on helping guide people, Tami, and tell people where they can find you.
Okay, well, we're on the web at lifearchitectscoaching.com, and there's an S on the end of architects. And so you can find me at Tami at lifearchitectscoaching.com. And we've got a blog and all sorts of things on our website for you to listen to and think about and read.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
Tami Peterson, Tami
yes,
Peterson,
yes.
thank you so much. And we hope to hear many good things from all the wonderful people that you're propelling on their way.
Well, thank you. It's a lot of fun. So thanks for having me on.
We thank you for listening as well, and we hope that you will rate and review us, subscribe on all your favorite platforms. My thanks go to Caleb, my producer, and I hope you listen in next time. Bye. Thanks for listening to Conversation Balloons. Look for more episodes and information at leahfarish.com. That's LEAHFARISH.com. And follow me on Facebook and Instagram.